equal pay, regardless of gender or race. Like most women in the United States, I personally have experienced discrimination in the work field when it comes to gender or race. When I worked various occupations as a young woman in my 20s, one job comes to mind. Without having my college education completed, the job I had at the time while attending college made me realize how different the treatment for me and the other women employed was compared to the men at our establishment. Hearing my boss say, "Ladilia, you should have been a blonde," only because I accidentally forgot what type of beer one of our customers asked for. It made me laugh for a moment. However, minutes later, when I realized my coworkers were around the vicinity we were at and could hear, suddenly I felt ashamed. I thought, what an idiot I must be that my to accept what my boss said at that moment by laughing and not responding with, "Hey, that is a real sexist thing to say. I would appreciate you not stereotyping me because I'm a woman." I do regret not speaking up, not only for me, but for the other women I worked with and for the women who would come after me. Today I will persuade the class that we should reform equal pay in the work field, regardless of gender or race. In order to do so, I will discuss two things. First, I will describe the problem about how equal pay in the work field affects women from education, gender, stereotypes, and race. Then I'll introduce my solution. Normally, earnings increase as the years of education increase for both men and women. Usually, having more education would be an effective tool for increasing earnings, but women's median earnings are less than men's at every level of academic achievement. All those women were more likely to graduate from high school than men. They were less likely to go on to college and graduate. AAUW found that after graduating to a pay gap, the earnings of both women and men 1 year after college graduation, women were paid 82% of what men were paid. Over half of women continued to be employed in lower income paying sales, administrative support positions, and service positions for occupations. The educational process of women, who now outnumber men in other attainment of bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and doctoral degrees, has driven the gains of earning power, according to the National Equal Pay Task Force from the article 50 Years After the Equal Pay Act, published by Obama Archives in June 2013. Women with college degrees who work full-time make an average 26% less than male peers with college degrees. That would be according to Deborah J. Baggins and Kevin Miller from the article The Simple Truth About Gender Pay Gap, published by the Journal of Economic Literature in 2018. During the 1980s and beyond, women's educational attainment increased, and so did the women's movement into higher paying professional and management jobs. Women now obtain 51.5% of employed workers. Today, women are still more likely to enter occupations where the majority of workers are female. This includes education, healthcare, human services fields. Women are still pretty behind when it comes to other non-traditional fields such as science, technology, transportation, engineering, construction, and mathematics fields. Over half of women continue to be employed in lower income paying sales, administrative, supportive positions and service positions for occupations. The additional educational progress of women, who now outnumber men in attainment of bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and doctoral degrees, has driven the gains in earning power. Stereotypes that women over the years have experienced concerning their occupational choices has haunted women in the work field for decades. Those keen on downplaying the gender gap often claim women voluntarily choose lower paid positions. According to Scheider and Gold, that would be from the article Women Work and Gender Pay Gap, published by the Economic Policy Institute in July 20th, 2016. Even when men and women work on the same type of occupation as a hairdresser, nurse, teacher, cosmetologist, computer engineer, mechanical engineer, or construction workers, it seems that men make a lot more on average compared to women, according to CPS microdata from 2011-2015. In the past, women's occupational consisted occupations consisted of cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the family. The authors employed a laboratory experiment to evaluate the hypothesis that status-based discrimination plays an important role in an audit study of an actual employers to assess the real-world implications. The laboratory experiment found that mothers were penalized on a host of measures, including perceived competence and recommended starting salary. Men were not penalized for and sometimes benefited from being a parent. The audit study showed that actual employers discriminated against mothers, but not against fathers, according to Shelley J. Corral and Stephen Barnard and InPake from their article, Getting a Job, Is There a Motherhood Penalty, published by University of Chicago Press in 2007. Besides educational background, a number of hours worked, a labor force attachment, there are a few credible theories about women. One is that women hold a different, less valued skill set in comparison to men. Overt wage discrimination continues to persist for most women, and the last stereotype is women as a group are concentrated in a lower paying occupations than men. In addressing the gender gap in the United States by Nikita Mahandru, she offers the first major legal measure at the federal level to show the unexplained wage differences to creating the Equal Pay Act of 1963. It makes certain that employers pay employees, both men and women, equal rates for the jobs that are identical in skill, working conditions, effort, and responsibility across all racial and ethnic groups. Women who are working full-time will normally be paid less than men. In 2017, statistics from the AAUW found that among workers that year, Hispanic, African American, American Indian, Alaska Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander women have been paid a lower median annual earnings compared with non-Hispanic white and Asian women. Most white men are the biggest and most privileged demographic group in our work field, which is usually used as a scale for what earnings women of different backgrounds or ethnicities make in wages. Asian women, in comparison of the white men's salaries, have the least gender pay gap when it comes to 85% of men's earnings. Overall, the gap was the biggest for the Hispanic and African American women, which showed that they were paid only 53% of what the white men were in 2017, according to the research of AAUW. The social, economic, political history of the last 50 years set the stage for the choices and challenges women face today. Freedom from wage discrimination and equal pay for equal work is now what our law adheres. However, women's wages still are considered to be less than men. Women today still face challenges when beginning the most highly paid jobs. The social, economic, political history of the last 50 years set the stage for the choices and challenges women face today. Freedom from wage discrimination and equal pay for equal work is now what our law adheres. However, women's wages were still considered to be less than men. Women today still face challenges in beginning the most highly paid jobs. Even with the generation of cultural change and political organizing, we cannot for certain barely value women's contributions from the national economy to the family budget. Our United States prosperity depends on women at every level. With that being said, we turn to education policy and enforcement that outreach federal agencies are adding, then going forward with a plan that will make sure equal pay for men and women becomes a reality. In doing so, asking Congress to pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, we will be able to figure out the main steps needed to close the pay gap. After President Kennedy made a national promise and commitment to the cause of equal pay, the work to finally mend the problem will remain a work in progress. Hopefully, from today forward, we can reestablish the commitment to making sure equality for all Americans employed in the United States continues to flourish. I know there may be some of you out there that may feel that Congress passing the Paycheck Fairness Act may not quickly change equality for women in the work field right away when it comes to gender or race. Some of you may not agree, but this act alone will completely change the outcome. But research and new data have shown progress slowly with time, illustrating change happening eventually to an outcome of complete equal pay for all genders and race. Today I have persuaded the class that we should reform equal pay in the work field regardless of gender or race. After describing the problem about how equal pay in the work field affects women from education, gender, stereotypes, and race, I realize how important this issue has been for centuries, how the need for change is an imperative subject as we move forward in the future, with women being relied on today more than any other time in history to help partially or completely provide for their families. Although I have experienced discrimination in a few occupations I have been hired at, I specifically remember one time in the past where I felt I was working at the same skill set as other men at my cellular sales position, but found that I was getting paid less for selling more products than they were. I was upset when I noticed an extra hard work dedication to this employer not being valued or respected for the job I was handling, better than the men who were performing and selling their products. It was one more moment where being an ethnic woman whose partial college education was obviously not enough and whose bosses, once again, gender stereotyping me instead of valuing me for the extra hard work and dedication I provided their establishment. So remember, class, if you are a woman, do not ever be afraid to speak up for yourself. If you are a man, please acknowledge your women employers and employees as a person who is working as hard as you, if not more, to be accepted as equal in the workplace. With that being said, go women! And this is our year of change. And do not ever give up. And please follow your dreams. Like Bob Dylan says, times are a changin'.